This is Life Streams, capturing our history, championing kingdom values, creating a path for future generations.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life Streams. We're in the middle of an 8-part series on the gifts. It's so important that we understand the gifts that God has given us to utilize as we walk through life, as we minister to people, as we reach out to people. So I hope you will join us on this whole journey. In our first session, we looked at the big picture in trying to understand why the gifts are so important and how God has distributed the gifts to the body of Christ to be used for the sake of ministering to people. In our second session, we took a look at the big picture of all the different gifts that are described in the Bible and the different ways that they are used, big picture. For the rest of our series, we're going to be exploring each of these in depth. And today, we're going to look at the gifts of the Father. To understand the gifts of the Father well, let's take a moment and look at the background of the passage that we're drawing from in Romans 12. I learned from my husband many years ago that when we're looking at any passage of Scripture, we look at what comes before and we look at what comes after to get a proper context of what we're trying to understand. So let's do a little overview of the book of Romans. Paul the Apostle is writing to the church in Rome, the Gentile church. He had not ever been to Rome at this point. He didn't know these people in person, but he says in chapter 1 that he longs to come and visit them. Paul had been preaching for 21 years at this point, and the church planting work had already been well established in many places of Asia Minor. This was the end of his third missionary journey when he writes to the believers in Rome. Since Paul hadn't yet been in Rome, he doesn't address specific problems that had come up with the church, but he gives a mature overview, a theological overview of what it means to live in the gospel. He talks about salvation and he talks about sin, some of the very basic theological doctrines that we hold to today. And this gave the Roman believers an understanding of what the gospel was all about. It's interesting that in chapter 1, right at the beginning, Paul says, I long to come to you so that I can impart to you spiritual gifts. Now that word in the Greek actually says spirituals. He longs to impart spirituals. He longs to impart the things that he has learned, that God has taught him and taught the church at that point so that they wouldn't fall behind or miss out on anything that God had for the church. And what I found so interesting is he says that right up front, I long to impart the spirituals, but then he takes 11 chapters to lay the foundation for the church understanding the context in which gifts could be used. He realizes that if he launched right into the gifts, there would be a foundational piece that would be completely missing. And so he takes much effort to explain to the Roman church what it means to be a disciple and how to be positioned in such a way that the gifts can be used to minister life and encouragement and healing and all the other things. So let's remind ourselves of what we talked about in the last session, that the primary purpose of the gifts of the Father is to understand how we're wired. Why do we do what we do? What is our motivation? How are we wired by God? What defines our life motivation? What drives us? In other words, it's the why. Why do we do what we do? One of our mentors, Sylvia Gunter, has written a little book called Free to Be You, and she has given us permission to share some of the things that she has described in this book, and I love her definition of the gifts of the Father. Read along with me. Our life motivation, what motivates us, It indicates a gift of grace that's a basic inward drive, who you are, how we view ourselves, how we view others, how we view God. It's the mindset through which we interpret life and how we respond to the things that we experience. It's how we make decisions, how we choose ministry, what kind of friends we enjoy, how we choose a mate, how we interpret our world. All of these things are connected to our basic life motivation. As we begin to dive deeply into each of these 7 gifts, I would encourage you to be listening by the Holy Spirit to identify which one you lean towards the most. Now, many of us, probably most of us, can see ourselves in more than one of these areas, but there's going to be one that pops out and that stands out the most. And it will be really helpful for you to identify that. You might even want to take notes as we're going along in this, things that you can remember to ponder on later that will help you understand yourself and how you're motivated. Okay, so let's take a look now at the 7 different gifts that are listed in the passage in Romans. The first one is what we would call prophet. This is the motivational gift that's visionary and creative, and it naturally takes an initiative to lead others to pioneering new exploits with excellence while aligning to truth and high standards. That's a lot of words. Let's put it more simply. This is a leader who creates vision, who is able to implement vision, and they're a natural leader. They see ahead even beyond what is actually reality yet. Now, this doesn't mean that you're giving prophetic words all the time, even though we're labeling this prophet. But it's really more similar to the gift of apostle, which we'll take a look at out of the passage in Ephesians 4 in a later session. It's the initiator. It's the natural leader. He has to lead. That's just who he is on the inside of him or her. They see how to do it better. They see ahead at what it could be. They are usually the leaders of a new project. They're hard workers. They're self-starters. They're also opinionated and judge and evaluate everything sometimes too quickly. We're going to take a whole session to talk about the blind spots of every gifting, because every gifting has the potential to go wrong if we don't mature and grow up in our gifting. But one of those potential areas for the prophet is that you can be so opinionated that you judge situations before you see things in the whole picture. The prophet-motivated person is committed to truth and integrity. It's very important that there's honesty and openness and transparency in all that they do. The prophet also processes really quickly. Their mind just works really quickly. They're driven by efficiency and they're time-oriented. There's a passion for excellence there. And a prophet needs to have a goal. They need to have a project. They need to have a vision, or they feel lost. A prophet also has the ability to embrace a problem and to figure out how to solve it. And the prophet has a really high standard for themselves and can sometimes put that high standard onto other people. You're probably thinking to yourself, oh, I know people like that. Or maybe you're thinking to yourself, I'm one of those. Well, I, Debbie, am one of those. I am so prophet motivated. All of these things describe who I am. And I'm particularly aware of the blind spots and those places where if my gift is not used with maturity, I can really bring harm to other people. But this is how I'm wired. The second motivational gift that is listed in this passage in Romans is that of servant, serving, helps. That's the person who loves to be behind the scenes and help see the project be accomplished, but they want to be behind the scenes. The motivational gift that works as a team player in a supporting role, establishing the atmosphere in order that God's work is fulfilled through the leadership of others. This is the person who just sees the need and just goes ahead and does it. They don't need to wait to be asked. They have so much joy in being able to serve behind the scenes. They're the ones that will stay after church and line up the chairs that have gotten all out of order. They're the ones that will pick up trash off the ground when they see that someone has left garbage behind. They just love to serve in that way. The servant has a motivation to empower others to achieve their goals, and they want to be part of the team to enable that vision come to completion. Many servants, many people that have a helps gift are also passionate for prayer. It's very interesting. They're ones that would see a need and are willing to go to prayer about that situation. As part of a larger team, they're extremely loyal to leadership. A servant is trustworthy and reliable. You can give them a task and they'll get it done, and you don't have to worry that they're going to just drop it or not care about it. They will follow through. A servant thrives on having an assignment, especially when they know that it's part of a bigger picture to accomplish a larger goal or vision. They don't need to be affirmed for their serving. In fact, they'd rather not even be noticed in their serving. And that's a very, very unique part of someone who is servant motivated. Our third gifting is what we're calling teacher. The teacher is the motivational gift to dig deep, to understand and explain truths that can be used to teach and train and mentor others towards their destiny, including a greater Christ-likeness and maturity. Now, the teacher is always searching for new information, for new understanding, for greater revelation. A teacher values precision and accuracy in the sharing of details. They'll get very impatient with someone who stretches a truth or under explains a truth. They need to be accurate in the details. The teacher has a need to validate truth for themselves, and if they're not sure what they're hearing, they'll research it out to make sure. A teacher enjoys learning new things. A teacher also tends to be established in their ways, and they prefer the old, established, validated ways of doing things. Don't have to have the newest, best, greatest, latest. Because they have discovered the foundational bedrock of what they know to be true, of what's already in their arsenal. A teacher tends to have a really deep commitment to their family and to traditions, and those things are very important to maintain the foundational history and integrity of a family unit or of a project. That's really important to a teacher. A teacher will also be wary of the latest and greatest truth that seems to be floating out there. It's really important for a teacher to only believe what they know is trustworthy to believe from the scriptures. And if something doesn't line up with scripture, there's an automatic inbuilt warning light in their spirit that will start blinking if someone is sharing something that seems to be off or seems to be out of line with the Word of God. A teacher also tends to process more slowly, more intentionally, more deliberately. It doesn't mean they're slow people, but the way they process information and truth and research, they need time to think through and ponder and reflect before they will commit to a new idea. So when a teacher is actually teaching, they will tend to teach from more of a theological perspective, and they hesitate to share personal stories or personal testimonies. They would rather stick to the theological bedrock of what they are teaching about. The teacher will tend to be the last one to speak up in a group conversation, but when they do, everybody stops and listens because there's wisdom that has come from an intentional pondering and considering before they speak. A teacher doesn't like to impose on other people. They would rather do it themselves. They would rather serve themselves and not make things more difficult for other people. That's just how they're wired. The last thing is kind of a fun one, but I see it even in my husband. The teacher has a sense of humor. They're quiet, but they're quick-witted, and they'll come up with one-liners that are so perfect for the conversation that's being had that everyone will take note of it. And that's a really wonderful strength of a teacher. So I'll ask you this question. Do you see teacher in yourself? Our next gifting is the exhorter or the encourager. This is the motivational gift to come alongside others to bring encouragement, comfort, and hope, challenging others to grow in their walk with God and speaking destiny into them. It's a really interesting balance of encouraging, but yet, okay, you can do this kind of challenge and exhortation to go further and to grow in the Lord. It's a wonderful balance of the two because we need both, don't we? We need encouragement when we're discouraged, but we also need people to say to us, come on, you can do this. Get up and let's go. An exhorter, an encourager, is motivated by relationships. It's crucial for them to be relational with people. They're motivated by persuasion. They're also motivated by the approval of others. In other words, can you hear that the encourager, the exhorter, is very relational? It's important for them to have relationship with people. It's probably more important than anything else, and they will view their world through how they are relating to other people. An encourager connects easily with other people, and they get their energy from being with other people. So most encouragers are going to be extroverts. We would define extrovert as those who get refueled by being with other people. And this is what an encourager is all about. An encourager has a God-given ability to love people. And this is not a given for everyone. We're commanded to love people, but there are just some people who so naturally have it in their heart to reach out and care for other people. And this is a God-given thing. This is not even a skill to be learned, even though we all need to love other people, but it's a God-given thing inside of them that they care for people and that they love people. They're able to meet people where they're at. They don't judge easily. They want to just come and build up and encourage and strengthen those that they're connected to. Encouragers also tend to have a big vision and big dreams on a big scale. And that might sound like prophet, and there's a certain sense in which it's parallel. But because they look at life positively, they can just see what could be out there for them and for other people. They're not afraid to dream and to go big. Encouragers and exhorters tend to be good public speakers. They're articulate because it's important for them to express affirmation and encouragement to people. They also tend to be good at evangelism because they care for other people. And so they're not afraid to reach out in that way. An encourager networks and teams well with other people and sometimes enjoys leading, though doesn't have to lead all the time. An encourager can disagree with someone without alienating themselves. In other words, they will say, okay, I can agree to disagree with you, but my relationship with you is more important. So even though we disagree, let's continue to be friends. That is the heart of an encourager, of an exhorter. They're really good at reconciliation. They love to see people come back together in relationship together, and where one relationship has been broken. And one of the biggest hallmarks of an encourager and an exhorter is that their schedule stays really full. They fill their life to the fullest. How much can I do in a day? How many projects can I take on? Because when I do that, it means that I am in contact with other people and I'm relating with other people. So they're always busy with a very full schedule. So this gives a picture of what the encourager and exhorter is. Do you see yourself in this description? Our next gift from this passage in Romans 12 is giver. This is the motivational gift to recognize God's blessing, to mobilize and gather resources, and generously, sacrificially, and cheerfully give of those resources of time, talent, and treasure. Now, this is actually the hardest gift to identify, to pinpoint, because it's people with this gift, there's a big diversity, and they like many different kinds of projects and interests and activities. The key is that they're looking for ways to move a project forward through the contribution that they can give, either by finances or time or their own talents. The giver tends to be pretty independent and like their freedom. They don't like to be put in a box. They need alone time, but they don't like to be alone for a long period of time. Community is really important to a giver because they tend to be a networker of people and resources to create a new project. The giver tends to have a blend of enjoying the old and the new. Tradition is important, but not being afraid of new innovation is also important. It's a really unique balance together. A giver is very resourceful. They can find solutions to problems, to situations where it doesn't seem obvious what the solution would be. They can come up with a solution. A giver is relentless, and they will push and push and push to leave a legacy, to leave a generational impact. They won't give up. It is hugely important for that aspect of leaving a legacy behind. A giver likes order, and they like everything to be in its place. And probably the biggest thing about a giver is that they give really wisely. They won't just give, especially finances, they won't give just to any old project, and they won't give a little bit here and a little bit there. They are listening and looking for the projects that they feel have the greatest potential for impact, projects of integrity, projects of vision and maturity and faith, and all those things that we value in the kingdom. And that's where they will put their resources. They are willing to give sacrificially and generously of time and talent and resources if they believe in the project and believe that it has eternal value. One of the biggest hallmarks about someone who is motivationally gifted as a giver is that they like to give in secret. They don't want everyone to know where their giving is. Of course, Jesus tells us to give in, all of us to give in secret, but a giver in particular does not want it to be known that he is giving, especially when it's a large sacrificial gift for obvious reasons. They want to be anonymous. So, do you see yourself as a giver? Okay, our next gift in this passage is what we call ruler. You could call it leader as well, but ruler is the name that we're giving to it. This is a motivational gift to lead by casting vision, motivating and directing people, administrating and communicating goals that create a solid pastoral team environment that enables teams to work well together to accomplish a goal. In other words, you're a great team leader. You lead projects. You might lead a church. You might be the lead pastor. You might be the director at the top of an organization. This gifting is designed to bring order to a project or to a group of people to get a project done. This is the person who can take a task, a big task. They can break it down. They can assign specific tasks to different people on their team. They can think it through. They understand the logistics. They have the big picture of what needs to happen, but they know how to take the big picture and break it down into bite-sized pieces so that the team can each have a part of ownership in the project. And they will motivate their people in that way. This is your part of a bigger project. They can mobilize a large group of people to accomplish a task. And a ruler, a leader, they thrive under pressure. You're good at time management, and you tend to be more interested in how to get the job done more than the why of the job. In other words, we can be really task-oriented. Let's just get it done. This is how we're going to get it done. You do this, you do this, you do this, and we will get it done. And the why of the project, while it's important for the leader, it's not as important. So the ruler is not necessarily visionary in themselves like the prophet is, but the ruler can take a project like working together with a visionary. A visionary says, why don't we do this? And the ruler will say, okay, this is what it's going to mean. This is what it's going to take to get it done. We need to do this, 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 this. They know how to execute the project so that the vision can be accomplished. So they don't necessarily get the vision themselves, but they're really good at implementing the vision to see the project accomplished. A ruler tends to be a good multitasker. They can be doing many things at the same time and have their fingers in many parts of the project to make sure that it's done well. The ruler is also really good at, okay, this didn't work. How can we do it another way? In other words, they're good at plan B. If plan A does not work out, if circumstances change and they're not able to go forward with the original plan, they're really quick to be able to come up with another way to get the project done. And often will have a backup plan in the back of their minds in case that is necessary. A ruler values loyalty in their people. And loyalty and relationship with their person that they're working with is even more important than their competency. Loyalty is really important. A ruler tends to draw out the best in other people. They see the potential in other people, and they have an ability also to say, okay, we have a problem here. This is how we can fix it. The ruler isn't so concerned about, well, who is responsible for making that thing fail? That's not an issue for the ruler. They just look at, okay, this happened. It wasn't good. So let's figure out a way to get it done and to get it fixed. And they can fix it. A ruler tends to be pretty secure in themselves. They don't need a lot of affirmation from other people. But when they are mature, as a mature leader, they will be good shepherds and be building into the lives of the people that they're leading, and they become good shepherds and good nurturers. The seventh and last gift that is explained here in this passage is that of mercy. Mercy is the motivational gift to respond with empathy and compassion towards the suffering or those in need, and caring for them with acts of love that help alleviate their distress. The mercy-motivated person will always be aware with their antennas up for those that are suffering. And it's built into a mercy to figure out a way to alleviate that suffering. Mercies tend to delight in beauty and nature, and they have a wonderful ability to savor life, to not have to move so fast like the prophet or the ruler does. Mercies enjoy the experience of life. They don't like to move fast. Mercies tend to struggle a little bit more with change. They don't like rapid change. They need time to transition emotionally when change is going to happen. And the mercy will treasure being over doing. They would rather be and enjoy and savor and bask in the beauty of life than to be busy all the time doing things. Mercies often have a passion for worship, and they're very sensitive to the need for things and people to be in alignment with each other. They are really sensitive when things are out of alignment and will do anything possible to see people and especially relationships realigned. A mercy-motivated person tends to be really a safe person to be around for wounded people. When we come in contact with someone who has some really deep needs, it's a mercy-motivated people that will reach out to them every time. And that person will then feel safe in their presence because they don't feel like they're being judged. The mercy-motivated person will make decisions based on their heart and intuition. They don't just look at the facts, but they feel their way through discerning a different situation and what to do about it. A mercy person will have a lot of relationships, but only a few close friends. There's only a few people that they'll open their hearts to and really be open with. A mercy-motivated person also hates confrontation. It's really hard for them to correct or to exhort or to have to confront a person. And that can appear as indecisive. But the mercy-motivated person, because relationships and smoothness in relationship and peace in relationships is so important, it's really hard for them to be confrontive. And we find that people who are mercy-motivated tend to lean towards relief work, working with the poor, working with the disadvantaged, feeding the hungry, mercy kinds of missions, income generation projects in missions, things that will alleviate the suffering of people, working with widows, working with orphans, that kind of thing. So, are you a mercy-motivated person? So we've taken a look at these 7 motivational giftings, and I hope that you have found yourself in one or more of these places, with one being the most dominant. Let's just review the purpose of these gifts as we close. This is why we do what we do. This is understanding how we are wired by God, how God Himself has created us in such a way with a bent towards one of these giftings. It defines our life motivation. It motivates what we do and why we do it. It's what drives us. So this is the gifts of the Father. So I hope this helps you to understand this beautiful list of giftings that God has given us, that the Father Himself has imparted to the church for the sake of us living and growing and becoming more like Jesus. So in our next session, we're going to move on to the gifts of the Spirit. That's the second column in our graph that we have created for this series. And we'll be looking at those giftings. Those are the supernatural giftings that we discover as we grow in the Lord. So I hope that you will join us for the next session and the rest of this series as we discover the gifts.
This is Life Streams. If you've enjoyed today's session, be sure to like, comment, and share. And of course, you'll want to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new episode. And would you consider becoming a part of the Life Streams community to enable us to continue doing what we do? It's as easy as clicking on the donate link below. Thank you for joining us.